After working our way through the literature having to do with Solomon, both the history and also the wisdom writings of Proverbs and Song of Solomon and Ecclesiastes, we are now back to what I am finding to be a very enjoyable portion of our 2020 Bible reading, which is the parallel accounts of Kings and Chronicles, this week now getting into the divided kingdom. So let's talk about what we see. Okay, we learned at the end of Solomon's story that the kingdom was going to be torn from the house of David and many of the tribes, 10 of the tribes given to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. And so we read about that division. And so generally speaking, what we're seeing in both Kings and Chronicles is the story of the divided kingdom. And we see conflict not only as the origin of this division with the foolishness of Rehoboam, but even as both lines continue, there is war, conflict between the two, and both kingdoms, largely speaking, are drifting from the Lord. Jeroboam's sin of the golden calves is highlighted as the chief sin, and it will continue to be referred back to throughout the history told to us in Kings and Chronicles. But even in the southern kingdom of Judah, both of these accounts show us that the kings are, again, for the most part, drifting away from the Lord. Okay, let's talk about Kings and then about Chronicles. One of the most crucial chapters in understanding the book of Kings is 1 Kings 13, which is a very odd story, but it's crucial for a couple reasons. And both of those reasons have to do with this very point, which is that the word of the Lord is certain, and in some respects you could say that's the message of the book of Kings. God's word happens, and it must be taken seriously. So, on one hand, we have in 1 Kings 13 this very far-looking prophecy that there's going to come a king named Josiah who will finally burn down the altars that Jeroboam set up, that we already said become this perpetual stumbling block. Josiah is at the very end of Judah's history before they are taken into captivity. And so 1 Kings 13, at really the beginning of the divided kingdom, looks ahead to the end to say God has determined what will happen. And naming Josiah by name is a big statement to say God knows what's going to happen and he is in control. His word is certain. But also in 1 Kings 13, the odd part about the story is this whole deal where the man of God, the prophet who is sent to proclaim this message to Jeroboam, is told not to turn aside. An older prophet lies to him and says, God told me you can turn aside, it's okay. And the young man is killed for disobeying God's word. And that may seem unfair to us. He was tricked, he was lied to. But the point is this: God's word is certain, it must be taken seriously. And so if he has said something, it must be followed. Well, again, this serves as one of the larger themes in the book, and it relates to another crucial moment in the book of Kings, the contest at Mount Carmel, where Elijah will stand up against who is the other chief villain in the story of Kings, maybe the main chief villain after Jeroboam, which is King Ahab, who has nationalized Baal worship and led Israel into further apostasy. Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, and his plea to God is this: let it be known this day that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant. That is what the people of Israel are missing, that God reigns in Israel and that his prophet, first Elijah and then Elisha, although there are other prophets we see mentioned quite a bit in these accounts, God speaks through his prophet to show that he is in control and that his word will be fulfilled. And if it's not paid attention to, there are consequences for that. So that's really the message of Kings. Okay, then over in Chronicles, we see, as we've seen before, something a little bit different. Not a contradictory account, but a different angle. For one, Chronicles does seem to focus much more on Judah. But notice that in the accounts of these first kings of Judah, Rehoboam and then Abijah and then Asa, there is this common theme with each of them, that when they turn to God and they cry out to him, God sees, he hears, and he delivers. But Chronicles is highlighting what we don't see in Kings, which is the moments where these kings do seek the Lord and the blessings that come to them by trusting in God. And so, again, this has been very enjoyable to me. I hope it's enjoyable to you. Check back in next week for week 29. Thank you.